I would say if you're making your main source of income from UGC, do not move to Asia.
What's going on, guys? Today I am joined with a special guest. We have Kelsey Vonnier on the podcast. Kelsey is a content creator who is living full time in Bali right now. Kelsey, what is going on?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here, although I'm still waking up, but it's all
I
good.
well, yeah, I appreciate you doing this. It's kind of late my time, early your time, since you're over on the other side of the world. But I wanted to start off and just hear a little bit more about your content creation journey, how you got into UGC.
Yeah, so, it's kind of a funny story. It's definitely not the same as most people I feel like lately, but basically, my husband and I, we went on a month-long honeymoon to Europe, and we got back to the States and we were like, "Oh my God, we hate our lives, we hate our jobs. We liked traveling more." So we sold everything we owned and quit our jobs and started traveling, and that was 6 years ago. And we had no clue how to work a camera. We had no clue how we were going to make money. We were just living off savings. Um, and then 6 months in, we had this one company, like this travel company, reach out to us and they were like, "Hey, can we send you this travel tent and you just like take cool photos using it on your travels?" And we were like, "Yeah, epic." And we totally got ripped off. I think we got paid like $500 to send them like 100 photos or something
Wow.
crazy like that. But we were like, $500, yeah. And then that kind of snowballed. Then short form video became a thing, and we got better at our craft, like both my husband and I. And he steered away from the social media thing, and I stayed really into it. I really enjoy it. And then brands were reaching out to me asking if I could make them reels, and it wasn't called UGC. It was just I was just getting paid to make content for these brands. Um and then yeah, now here we are. Now I make my full-time income from it and I freaking love it. I mean, it's so fun.
So 6 years ago, when you and your husband made that decision, were you like documenting the journey? Like, were you on, Instagram before you guys
Yeah.
were in the social media space, or like, how did that initial brand find you? Was it just through Instagram? Real quick, if you're a content creator that's looking to land more brand deals, you need to check out the Brands Meet Creators newsletter. We send tons of opportunities to work with brands, plus an actionable tip for landing more UGC and brand partnerships every week. Check us out in the link below or at brandsmeetcreators.com.
Yeah, they found us through Instagram, but I think we probably only had like 10,000 followers at the time. But like, I don't know, back then it was kind of when the travel Instagram thing was like brand new. So, like, 10,000 followers was kind of like a lot at that time. But we still had no clue what we were doing, and they found us on Instagram. But I've also had a YouTube channel for a really long time, so I was documenting stuff on there as well. Um, I've always been really into like sharing my life online. Like that's how I express myself. So yeah, I mean, they found us on Instagram. That's the answer to your question.
So okay, so then you start traveling. More and more of these brands are reaching out. And then when did you guys land in Bali? Because that's where you are now, and I think you've been based there for a little bit, right?
Yeah, so we got here in 2017. And we were only supposed to be here for 2 weeks because, like, the plan was to travel. It wasn't to, like, find a new home. But we just fell in love with the island and wanted to stay. And yeah, so we've been here for, I guess it will be 6 years next year, which is crazy.
That's awesome. That's like sounds similar to myself and a lot of other people that I talk to that end up moving somewhere, right? Like I was planning on staying in Colombia 6 weeks or so, and it's been like over a year at this point.
Yeah.
That tends to be the story for a lot of people. Oh, we're just going for a little bit, and then we never ended up leaving. What did you love about Bali? Was it just like the nature, the cost of living, the people?
I mean, all of the above. Like, you definitely can't get this quality of living anywhere else for the price. Um, but I will say it's gotten so much more expensive over the years. Like, and even just this year, the price of like renting a house has like tripled since March.
Wow.
So like all of the things you see online that's like Bali's so cheap and it's like, yeah, I mean, it can be and it definitely used to be, but then no one's talking about how they're paying like $4,000 a month to rent a 3-bedroom house. Like no one's really talking about that type of thing because that wasn't a thing until this year.
So it's gotten significantly more expensive. This is kind of a topic that I wanted to get into because I talk with a lot of people that are, they're creating content in the US. They're trying to make this full time, right? They're trying to like make this jump and they want to go somewhere to kind of cut back on expenses. And like Bali's one that comes up all the time. So you've seen just like a significant increase in just rent and everything overall.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so basically everything was kind of staying around the same price. And then the pandemic hit and the borders closed. So there wasn't any tourism. So prices just like dropped because people needed to fill their houses and stuff like that. Um, but then as soon as they opened borders, prices just like doubled and then tripled. And also, another thing that people don't talk about is when you get a year lease here, you have to pay for the whole year of rent up front. You don't pay monthly. So, like,
Significant.
you're dropping like, I mean, sometimes 20, $30,000 at once just to pay for a year of rent. I mean, of course there are places that are cheaper and you can pay monthly. Like if you get a guest house, which is basically like, I don't know how to it's kind of like a glorified hostel. Like you have your own room, your own bathroom, and you share a kitchen, but it's not a house. It's like individual rooms. That would be like a guest house. Those are definitely cheaper, but even those are like they went from being like $200 to $300 a month when I first moved here to now you can find them for like $1,000 a month. It's just absurd. Like it's crazy how much prices have increased. I
With that,
think
are you considering like going somewhere else, or are you guys just you're in love with Bali? You'll stay there for the foreseeable future.
no, I don't think we're gonna go anywhere. Like we still love it here and we have our like we don't this obviously I'm in my house right now. We don't own this, but we have like a long-term lease on it. So we've already paid for our rent for like the next couple years. So we don't really have to worry about price increase. And then hopefully by the time our lease ends here, we can build or something like that.
So it seems like you used to hear all the time like, oh, you can go to Bali and live off of $1,000 a month. Like, what is like a reasonable amount that someone should look to make in terms of like monthly income to just like support themselves over there?
Well, it depends on where you live. I will say where I live is definitely the most expensive because it's like the scene, it's like the cool place to go. So everything's way more expensive here. Um, so I mean, you can comfortably live a great lifestyle. And put away some savings. I would say with like just bringing in 2,000 a month. But you're not going to be living where I live. Like honestly, I would say like if you want to be living a super like comfortable lifestyle, not have to worry about money, still put away savings, I think you need to be bringing in closer to like 3 to $4,000 a month now.
Gotcha.
Like it's gotten way more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah. And I feel like that's somewhat similar actually to where I'm at in Colombia right now. Like $3,000, $4,000 a month can get you like a pretty comfortable lifestyle down here. You know, really nice apartment in like a solid area, and basically be able to do anything that you want to do.
Yeah, and also like visas are pretty expensive here, so you have to keep that in mind. Like and also it's illegal to work here unless you have a work visa and nobody talks about that. So it's not as easy as people make it out to be. Like social media makes it seem like this easy dream, but like really it's people get deported if they get caught working without a work visa and
Jeez. I
yeah.
I want to jump into more of like the content creation, the UGC
Mhm.
side of things, because like there's so many people that kind of want to move out to Bali. I hear a lot about like Thailand as well. What are some of the challenges associated with that? Like the one big one that comes to my mind is like finding companies that are willing to ship there, right? That's probably the big one.
Yeah.
I'm curious how one you've dealt with that, and two, like are there other big challenges that people might not be aware of?
Yeah. So when I first moved here, like the shipping thing was so bad that it wasn't even worth having brands try to send stuff because it was like a 50-50 chance that the package would even make it to you. Whether it was like getting lost in shipping or getting stolen or whatever, like it just wasn't even worth it. And it's gotten significantly better over the last, however long I've been here. And now, I think because I've lived here for so long and I've been able to kind of like work out the kinks in the system, brands trust me. So they're willing to send me packages way easier than like sending someone who just got here 6 months ago. Um, but even still, like it's expensive. It's way more expensive for the brands to ship here. Then we have to pay import tax most of the time. So like that's expensive. And then I mean, look, being totally honest, like it's tough. I could probably be making like at least 3 times more than what I'm making if I lived in the States. But I wouldn't have the lifestyle that I have
Right.
if I lived in the States. So for me, it's worth it. Like I just hustle more.
And so when you're working with brands, are you trying to optimize more for like long-term relationships so you don't have to go through that whole shipping and the import tax? Like, do you have like, I'm assuming maybe you don't even do packages of like one video, right? Are you just only doing like bigger deals?
Yeah, I do try to go for long term or like packages of 5 videos. Um, but I do surprisingly have brands that are like, okay, we just want to start with one video and they're willing to ship. And I'm like, hey, if you want to do it, go ahead. But I usually try to like upsell by making more videos or I don't know, trying to work out a deal for long term because I know it's better for them and it's also better for me. And the brands that are here, they don't really have the budget like international brands do.
Right. Do the brands typically cover the shipping and the import fee?
Yeah, so I never pay for that. I always make sure that they're paying for that. But what I do offer, because I have somewhat of a following on social media, what I do offer is like, let's say it's a brand that I really want to work with, um, and they're kind of hesitant about the shipping or import tax. I usually offer like some free promo on my Instagram stories, and they're like super stoked with that. So then they're like, okay, we'll pay it.
And do you find that like once you get them in the door, right? You do that first deal with them. Now you have their product. You've cleared that hurdle of like getting it to you. Is it typically a little bit easier to kind of renew them or like continue to upsell them?
Yeah, it definitely is. But I will say, I don't know how to say this without sounding like bad. Typically, like the typical uh, start to end date for an ad is like 6-ish weeks, I would say. But I've had brands running my ads for like over a year and they're still converting. So sometimes it can be really hard to like be like, hey, that ad's converting really well for you. Like, let me make more. And they're like, hey, no, like, we're good. We don't need any more. Like, it's still working. So I'm trying to work out a way to somehow start getting commission or something. So that way I'm not just like losing out on money because, if I'm only selling a video for like 200, $300 and they're running that ad for a year, like I can't even imagine how much money I could have been making if I was at least asking for like a 5 or 10% commission.
Yeah. Or I mean, what you can do, I don't know if you've ever, tried this, is give them access to run it as an ad for only a certain amount of months and then like continue to charge, right? If it's converting really well, of course they'll continue to pay that fee month over month.
Yeah, I've just found that like most brands, like, to be honest, I think the reason that's kind of like a thing right now is because the UGC space is new and people are just trying to like figure out their way. But really, like, brands just they want it to be easy. They want to purchase the video and never have to think about it again. And that's kind of how I feel too. Like, I'm not organized enough to like remember that in 3 months' time this brand can't run my ad anymore. Like, it's honestly like it's less of a headache for me to just they purchase the video one time, they get unlimited rights.
Right.
That's why I kind of put like a higher price tag on my videos.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I've kind of heard both sides. I've heard the counter argument too, where it's like people have had horror stories of like giving rights forever to a video or like a picture or something, and then like it's everywhere, and like they got paid $200 for it. So like you hear that sometimes, but you're right. There's definitely a lot of upkeep required on the other side, right? Where if you're only charging for a certain amount of months, you have to be pretty organized and like stay on top of that and ensure that they're not still using that video. I was going to come back to the topic of like the challenges that people might face when they're trying to, continue this career in either content creation or UGC, and they're moving over to Bali, they're moving over to Asia. So we talked about like finding brands that are willing to ship there. Were there any other big challenges that you faced?
Well, for one, it was really expensive to set up my business and get my working visa, and then I have to pay taxes here and in the States. So, like, I would say that's probably a pretty big challenge because most people don't realize that just because they're working online, like, that doesn't mean that you can legally work here. Like, there's a big gray area in Indonesia when it comes to like foreigners living and working here because it's all just like really confusing and nothing really makes sense. And no one really talks about it because no one really knows what to say. Like, no one wants to say anything wrong. Um, but like, it's definitely a thing. Like, you can't come and work here and make money unless you have the proper visa. Um, and for me, like, that was like an upfront $6,000 cost just for my husband and I to get our business set up and then a 2-year visa. And then we have to keep renewing our visas. And then we have to pay taxes here and in the States. Like, that's definitely a thing.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that people don't talk about when it comes to like traveling somewhere else and kind of the whole like laptop lifestyle gets glamorized a little bit. Um, the final question I wanted to get to is for someone who is in this situation, right? I see this so often. They're making a couple $1,000s through UGC part time in the States, and they're like, I want to quit my job. I want to go move somewhere. Do you have like some tips for that person who maybe they want to go to Bali and like they want to go through this process? Like, what would you recommend for someone who wants to pursue that route?
Mm. Do you want me to be brutally honest?
100% brutally honest.
I would say if you're making your main source of income from UGC, do not move to Asia or Southeast Asia. Like, don't do it because as soon as you get here, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, realizing how hard it is to get, like, just because you're making $2,000 or $3,000 as a side hustle in the States doing UGC, you're going to be like pulling teeth to get that here.
That
So, like,
is that is the
yeah,
nugget that we all wanted right there. Like, don't move to Asia if you're still just kind of like scraping by with
yeah,
UGC. That's really, really good advice. And like, um, I think even some people who are like living in Europe right now, kind of experience that too, right? I hear, and people that live in Canada, everyone's like, it's so much harder to get deals here because people just don't want to ship there. So, really
yeah,
appreciate you sharing that and just like that absolute brutal advice to someone who maybe has those dreams of like being a UGC creator in Bali, that it's a little bit tougher than what people
yeah.
make it out to be.
And another thing, too, I'll mention is like everyone knows New York as like the art city. Everybody knows LA for Hollywood. Bali is like creative paradise. Everybody on social media comes here. So then you are competing with everybody who is like, one, probably a lot better than you, two, probably has way more followers than you, and three, has more money to be able to travel in and out or pay for whatever it is. Like, it is really hard and competitive here. So, yeah, just wanted to put that out there.
Appreciate you sharing that. That's the advice that we all wanted. Kelsey, this was a awesome conversation. Where can the listeners go to find a little bit more about you?
So, I'm just at Kels Vanier across all platforms. So, KelsVaughne. Can find
Awesome.
me pretty much anywhere with that handle.
And we'll link up your all your socials in the below of this video. Kelsey, again, appreciate you a ton for having this conversation. Appreciate the brutal honesty about being a UGC creator in Bali. And I'm sure that this was eye-opening for a lot of people watching this.
Yeah, I hope I didn't break too many hearts.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thanks for having me.